Do you want to come over to my place? Those simple words were the spark that ignited everything between the girl and me. It felt surreal, almost like stepping into a dream. She lay there, looking as if she were just sleeping, a serene, unbroken stillness. It had been years since I last saw my sister, and now, she rested in silence, her eyes closed. Not laughing. Not crying. Just sleeping. But it wasn't sleep. It was something far colder, far crueler. Seeing her like that, the word passed away brushed faintly against my mind. Yet, she didn't seem gone. Her face was so calm, so peaceful, it was hard to believe. It was as if any moment, she might open her eyes and flash the warm, knowing smile she always had. She was so young, someone murmured, their voice heavy with sorrow. Yes, she was young, barely in her mid-30s. Her life had unraveled too soon, stolen by a cruel stroke after years of relentless overwork and chaotic, irregular days. Her time should have stretched far beyond this. Surely, there were dreams she hadn't chased yet, plans left incomplete. And regrets, oh, how many regrets must have clung to her in those final moments. What will happen to Melon? The hushed voice of a mourner pulled me back, and my gaze shifted across the dimly lit funeral home. In a shadowy corner, a young girl clutched my sister's portrait, her slender frame trembling. That was Melanie, my sister's only child. My sister had married young, chasing dreams of a happy family. But happiness proved fragile, and the marriage ended. A single mother, she'd refused to let the weight of her circumstances break her. I'm fine. Leave it to me, she had told our worried parents with a resolute smile, embodying her unyielding sense of responsibility. True to her word, she raised Melanie with unwavering love and care. It had been years since I'd seen Melanie. My sister's busy life had kept her distant. Now, as I looked at her, I marveled at how much she had grown, a high schooler, tall and poised. But despite her strength, grief loomed large in her red, swollen eyes and the fragile way she held my sister's portrait. Mom, what's going to happen to Melanie now? I asked softly, my voice laced with concern. She's going to a facility, my mother answered, the words hitting like a sudden gust of icy wind. A facility? The thought felt wrong. Melanie was already so alone. Stripped from everything familiar, how much lonelier would she feel in a place like that? Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over as her trembling hands clung tighter to the portrait. The sight of her, so small, so heartbreakingly vulnerable, stirred something deep within me. My feet moved before my mind could catch up. Melanie, I called her name gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. Her wide, tear-filled eyes turned to me, and her lips quivered. Carl, she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of unshed grief. If you want, I hesitated, swallowing back my own emotion. Would you like to come stay at my place? Her eyes widened in disbelief. Really? Behind me, I could hear my mother's sharp voice. Carl, what are you doing? But I didn't falter. I held my ground. If you'd rather go to the facility, that's okay. But if not, my home is yours, I said, my voice steady. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, she reached out, her small hand slipping into mine. Yes. I'll go, she said firmly, her trembling replaced with resolve. If my sister could see us now, I thought, she would cry, tears of both sorrow and relief. Yeah, I think so too, I muttered softly. We spent the rest of the day navigating reluctant family members and logistical hurdles. By nightfall, Melanie was walking into my home, a modest, lived-in space. She stood in the doorway, her expression caught between curiosity and unease. Wow, she murmured, surveying the chaos. Piles of clutter crowded every surface, a silent testament to my eternal struggle with organization. Sorry about the mess, I said sheepishly. My sister used to scold me for this. I could almost hear her voice now, teasing me from the corners of my memory. Melanie handed me a trash bag, snapping me out of my thoughts. Carl, stop standing around. Let's clean up. I laughed, taking the bag. Right. Let's do it. 30 minutes later, the room looked presentable. Not perfect, but better. We ate takeout in comfortable silence, the simplicity of the meal oddly comforting. So, I asked between bites, can you commute to school from here? She nodded. It's just a different bus route. I can manage. Her quiet determination impressed me. But as we talked about her school and routines, one lingering worry surfaced. There's one problem, I admitted. What is it? She asked, her brows furrowing in concern. Cooking, I said gravely. I'm terrible at it. For a moment, she stared at me, then burst out laughing, a sound so bright and unexpected that it filled the room with warmth. Her laughter eased my embarrassment, though her next words caught me off guard. Mom used to say, Carl is kind and decent looking, but hopeless in the kitchen. I chuckled, surprised and touched. She really said that, huh? Melanie nodded, her smile softening. I'll handle the cooking. Mom would scold me if I didn't. Her words, so full of quiet resolve, struck me deeply. She was carrying her mother's strength, even in the face of her own grief. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That means a lot. Her smile in return was a mirror of her mother's, a bittersweet echo that tugged at my heart. And so, our new life began. It wasn't perfect, but in those small moments of shared laughter and quiet understanding, we found hope, a fragile yet resilient thread binding us together. The aroma wafted from the kitchen, rich and warm, as Melanie set the dish on the table with a practiced grace that seemed far beyond her years. Delicious, I said, savoring the first bite. She smiled softly, a gesture I'd come to cherish. She had learned from her mother since she was a kid, I thought, marveling at her skill. You're not a morning person, are you? Just like Mom, she teased, catching me mid-bite. I always used to get up early, I countered, puffing my chest slightly, hoping to sound like a responsible uncle. Not always, she quipped, arching a brow, her expression betraying her disbelief. Despite my bluster, it was clear Melanie wasn't just skilled in the kitchen. She excelled in everything. Laundry? She sorted it with military precision. Separate the colors to avoid disasters, she instructed, hands on her hips, a hint of a grin tugging at her lips. Yes, teacher, I joked, mimicking a salute. In truth, her competence amazed me. I had worried at first, how would we navigate this new life together? But as days turned into weeks, her laughter grew more frequent, her smiles more genuine, and with them, my heart felt lighter. Late one night, past 1 a.m., I spotted light spilling from her room. What could she be doing? I peeked inside. There she was, bent over her desk, lost in her notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Of course, I thought. She was a high school senior, neck-deep in preparations for college. Mom had told me her grades were stellar, among the top of her class. Even so, she never hesitated to help around the house. Was I worrying her unnecessarily? The thought gnawed at me until an idea struck like a lightning bolt. If I couldn't take away her burdens, I could at least lighten her load. Hot water splashed onto my finger, snapping me back to the present. I winced, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen. Would Melanie hear that? I froze, but her room remained silent. Exhaling, I finished assembling the tray. Knocking softly, I entered her room. Startled, she spun around. Her desk was a battlefield of books and notes, her effort clear in every scribble. I remember your mom said you loved hot chocolate, I said, offering the tray. Her eyes lit up, and a smile bloomed. Hot chocolate and a hot dog, she laughed. It's all I could manage, I admitted. But it's the perfect late-night snack, right? Extra ketchup, just how you like it. She took the tray, her smile growing. Thanks, Uncle Carl. This is great. Don't stay up too late, okay? I won't, she promised, her voice lighter than before. The next day, At work, a colleague asked, "So, how's it going, living with your niece?" "Better than I expected," I replied, smiling. "She's amazing, cooking, teaching me housework, and still managing her studies." "She's been through a lot," Charles mused, shaking his head. "Lost her mom so young, but she's holding up. You've got a special one there." Later, his words echoed in my mind as I passed a cake shop. Melanie had once lingered here, her eyes fixed on a chocolate cake in the window. "That looks delicious," she'd murmured. Without a second thought, I stepped inside. I picked out an assortment, imagining the joy on her face. When I got home, the house was unusually quiet. "I'm back," I called, but there was no answer. The faint glow of her room drew me in. Quietly, I approached, but something stopped me. A sound! Crying! My chest tightened. I had assumed she was fine, her strength unwavering. But here she was, sobbing, her sorrow pouring out in waves. Grasping the door handle, I hesitated. Then, softly, "Melanie, I'm coming in." She spun around, tears streaking her cheeks. It's nothing," she stammered, wiping her face hastily. I knelt beside her, pulling her into a hug. "It's okay to cry." Her body stiffened, then crumbled into mine, her sobs breaking the silence. "You've done so well," I whispered, stroking her hair. "I'm trying," she choked out. "I want to do well, for Mom. But it's so hard." Tears welled in my eyes as I held her tighter. "Mom always said you were her treasure," I began. "She loved you more than anything. And you don't have to push yourself so hard. Just by being you, living happily, you honor her." For the first time, she smiled through her tears. "Thank you, Uncle Carl." "Oh, and by the way, I got cake," I said, grinning. "Chocolate, your favorite." Her laughter filled the room, and as we shared the cake, her joy rekindled something in me. This life we were building, it wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And I vowed to protect her, always, for my sister and for Melanie herself.